Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jasmine Nolan Eccles. We are starting Workgroup 3's meeting on today, and the starting presenter is going to be our very own Mayor Jones with her presentation pertaining to the articles in the city charter.
Great. So I can just start. We're good. Okay. Well, thank you for having me today. Again, I am Mayor Tashara O. Jones, and I am the 47th mayor of the city of St. Louis. I have been mayor since April 20th, 2021. And have had the pleasure of serving this great city in other capacities as treasurer and as state representative. I commonly refer to myself as a recovering legislator. But today we're here to talk about the charter and in particular the mayor's office. My staff and I have had a chance to review provisions in the charter related to the mayor's office, also related to my responsibilities. And so if the committee will bear with me, I'll just go through some of the recommendations that we have agreed upon as a staff that we'd like to see the Charter Commission take a look at. So for starters, modernizing pronouns throughout the charter, I would say is necessary. The mayor and other officials in the charter are often referred to using pronouns he, him, and his. We'd like to see that updated to using they, them, or their, because as we know that currently majority of the citywide elected officials are women. And also, as we look forward into 2023 and beyond, people use different pronouns other than he, him, or his, or she, her, and hers. And so we'd like to use they, them, or their. Updating the temporary disability language in Article 7, Section 3. The charter and laws of Missouri do not adequately address what an elected official's temporary disability may be. In the unfortunate event that the mayor has a temporary or permanent disability, which would create confusion for the city, we'd like to have it match the 25th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, provides a better framework to incorporate temporary or permanent disability language. For temporary disability, define it as being unable to discharge the powers and the duties of the office, such inability being of temporary duration. Establish clear mechanisms to trigger and rescind temporary disability or inability. Require a signed declaration from the mayor that established a reason for the temporary inability, and allow either the mayor or their agent to transmit the declaration, most likely being the chief of staff or another designee. Incorporate the safeguard that failure to transmit shall not prevent the proper acting officer from performing the powers and duties of the office while the mayor is temporarily unable, and provide the declaration that it is in effect until rescinded by the mayor or the office is vacated. And likewise for permanent inability is triggered if both of the following are true: the mayor is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office for 45 consecutive days, and no written declaration of temporary inability has been transmitted, and requiring the acting official to request an appropriate official to file a court action or quo warranto to vacate the office. And if the appropriate court rules that the office is vacant, name the successor as provided for in the charter. Next, there are some changes that, again, we would like to see in the city charter pertaining to articles that are related to the work of the mayor's office. Again, we talked about modernizing pronouns, consistency in critical accountability authority. There are a handful of key city government positions which the 1914 charter did not provide the office of the mayor with both appointment and dismissal authority, For example, the fire chief, the police chief, the airport director, and the director of personnel. Side note, I believe that the director of personnel should be changed to the current nomenclature that's used by personnel, which is human resources or talent management, whichever we see fit. The police department and fire chiefs are currently hired and dismissed by the director of public safety. The city ordinance provides that the airport director is hired by the mayor, but the charter doesn't even mention the airport director, and the director of personnel is currently hired or dismissed by the Civil Service Commission. This all reflects an antiquated view of both public safety and civil service that's not accountable to the people. The hard-fought victories to make both public safety and personnel practices more responsive to the public should be codified in the charter by providing the person holding the office of mayor the means to ensure public safety and personnel leadership uphold those values. There's no reason to hold these positions separate in terms of accountability from other city departmental and administrative positions. One example in the Department of Personnel is when my administration came in, we were faced with a monumental task in modernizing the department, and understaffed departments can lead to poor services, which cannot be fixed without reforming the city's outdated personnel system. While we've made many strides in the last 12 months under the leadership of our current director, Sonia Jenkins Gray, we still have a long way to go. One of the significant legacy issues my administration continues to work through is inadequate or slow departmental staffing resulting from antiquated personnel operations, that were able to become so deeply entrenched, partly as a result of the mayor's inability to have full hiring or firing authority over the director of personnel in that department. As a result, city departments have been forced to work around the Department of Personnel by outsourcing work to vendors or other contractors, and there have been significant challenges relying upon said vendors as opposed to an internal city workforce. Ultimately, when it comes to a more responsive city government, that starts with the HR director or the director of personnel. And under the charter, the personnel director cannot be replaced unless they commit malfeasance or misfeasance, allowing the mayor the same accountability powers over them as other positions that I currently do, allows for them to be replaced for inadequate performance should that occur. And we're not saying that that's occurring now, but there have been challenges not only with my administration when I first started, but previous administrations as well, due to the current makeup of how the Department of Personnel is in the city charter. In Article, I'm adding 13, Section 15, remove division of policy language that says when the city is permitted by law to establish and maintain a police department, such department shall be a division hereunder. And remove the division of excise language saying that when the city is permitted by law to establish and maintain an excise department, such department shall be a division hereunder. Again, it's outdated language and doesn't reflect local control that we currently have of both of those departments, of the police department and the division of excise. In the Department of Human Services, Article 8, Section 1, Article 13, Section 1 and Article 13, Section 14A. Currently, the language refers to the Department of Human Welfare, which has long since been replaced with the Department of Human Services, and updating language throughout to correctly reference the Department of Health found in Article 8, Section 1, Article 13, Section 1, Article 13, Section 14-C. It currently refers to the Department of Health and Hospitals, which is also outdated as we no longer manage hospitals and haven't since the 1980s. We also need to remove reference to the Division of Hospitals in Article 13, Section 14C, and the Board of Hospitals in Article 13, Section 14C, Sections F through G. We also would like to add in the position of a corrections commissioner, the division of corrections. The head of said division shall be known as the corrections commissioner. They may be removed with or without cause by the Department of Public Safety. And you can talk to the Department of Public Safety about more language regarding corrections, but again, that commissioner is not listed in the charter. On the residency requirement, we need to update the charter to reflect our new residency rules. It provides that all officers and employees must reside in the city, but the personnel department can grant waivers and allow them to live outside of the city. Again, we worked with the state legislature to change the relevant state law to allow city employees to live outside of the city, and it should be updated to remove the prohibition on employees living outside of the city. Another sort of operational change that we'd like to see is municipal elections. We'd like to change the municipal elections to August and/or November instead of March and April like they are now. State law section 122.650 provides that the city shall have full power and authority to provide for and regulate all elections. And Article 2, Section 1 provides that general elections are held the first Tuesday after the first Monday in April in odd numbered years. The current date in April gives the mayor less than 2 weeks to do any sort of transition work. And also the budget starts the day after inauguration. The budget is presented to the Board of E&A the day after inauguration. So changing that to a April primary or August primary and possibly a November general allows the incoming mayor and or the Board of Aldermen, if we should change all municipal elections to that cycle, to start in the middle of the budget year and at the beginning of the budget process, which typically starts in late December, early January. So that gives the incoming mayor more input to the next budget year or the next fiscal year, rather than just having to adopt a budget without a lot of input, and really no chance to have an effective transition. On Article 9, on Article 25, Section 30, the charter currently provides that all public publishing in the city be done in 2 daily newspapers, one of which is German and one of which is English. We currently don't have 2 newspapers or 2 daily newspapers in the city of St. Louis, and we don't have a German one anymore. This should be modernized to provide that generally it should be done via a variety of means, the city's website, potentially otherwise a newspaper and online, possibly via social media channels that are owned and operated by the city. Notice of elections, Article 2, Section 6, similar to the above recommendation of moving that to August or November. The charter provides notice of election must be made in 2 daily newspapers. Again, we don't have 2 daily newspapers. And again, that should be revised to include online and other methods. On the procurement processes in Article 25, Section 29, we'd like to increase the requirements from 5,000 to 10,000 for securing competitive bids or anything over 10,000. One example, during the flood 2 summers ago, the $5,000 limit hampered the city's ability to respond quickly. And this limits our ability to purchase simple items. It can take up to 21 days or more to purchase common items like clocks, office chairs. The list goes on. And we spend a lot of time getting approval for small dollar purchases. So if we can increase that limit, that would allow us to be a lot more flexible. Article 28, Section 16 on modernizing anti-discrimination provisions. Again, we want to bring these into the 21st century. Previously or currently, it has racial, political, and religious discrimination. We'd like to modernize that to include national origin, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, pregnancy, childbirth, or other related medical conditions and disability status. So those are most of, if not most of the changes that we have discussed as a staff that we'd like to see to the city charter related to the mayor's office and the duties of the mayor's office. And I will entertain any questions you have.
I have a question, Mayor. Would you, when we go back to the procurement increase, would
Mhm.
it make sense to also tie that to an ongoing inflation schedule so that we don't have to come back in the future to change that so that the dollar figure indexes automatically up to inflation so that can increase over time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would definitely entertain that.
Mhm. Um, let me just ask a question structurally because I don't understand all of the various departments of city, of the executive branch, etc. But we have during our meetings a couple of times had an issue brought up of the potential for a Department of Transportation. That there is concern that the transportation functions themselves are really identified in several different areas, and that it's difficult for the constituents to know, particularly in cases of emergency, who's responsible for what. That brings to mind then not just transportation, and I would ask you about transportation, but also other departments and whether there is anything that relates to the charter itself in terms of departmental structure, commission structure, et cetera, that you would possibly consider updating as part of a modernization effort as well?
To answer your first question on the Department of Transportation, I would say that that responsibility primarily lies within the streets department, and with help from planning and possibly BPS or Board of Public Service. But I would say that maybe a division instead of a new department within one of those aforementioned departments would probably be a little better there.
Mhm. Okay.
And I'm
in-
sorry, what was
yeah,
your
in terms
last?
of the other, well, the list was developed, as we know, back there in 1914, and has not been amended all that frequently since. And so, of the departments and divisions and et cetera that you have, are there other areas like that where particularly they are related to constituent access, where it might be that you would want to consider additional divisions, departments, et cetera? And if so, what might those areas be?
No, I would say our constituent department is right now under the Department of Public Safety through the neighborhood stabilization officers. And then we also have, the separate legislative branch of the Board of Aldermen that do a lot of constituent outreach. I think that those two avenues have served us well. Especially now that we have fewer aldermen and they have increased staff capability to answer constituent concerns and are also exploring the use of better software to be able to handle a lot of those constituent issues electronically. So I would think that at least from my purview, I would say that we're okay there.
Mhm. Yeah. And I guess my final question, and then I'll cede the floor at this point. You had a long list of recommendations in terms of updates to the charter. We're recognizing that every interview that we go through, there's long lists, obviously, because the charter is so out of date.
Right.
And so of the list that you've gone through, which ones of those recommendations might be actions that could be taken through ordinance and wouldn't necessarily need a charter change itself? And of those that would need a charter change, require a charter change, which would be your priorities at that point?
Of the ones that we only focused on what has to be changed in the charter. So the I would say that like, for example, the director of airports is established via ordinance, but is not a charter position, right? And so we just focused on changes to the charter, not necessarily what we could do during via ordinance. But if I had sort of a top three, definitely the elections piece, because that required that we experienced a lot of heartburn in having less than 14 days to transition to being the chief executive of the entire city. And might I add, with little to no help from the previous administration. So what we've done as we are in this office is try to put together a lot of guides and things that, you know, so we can have a warm handoff to whoever follows my administration. But having more time to transition to the office, I think makes everything better, not only for the person who's transitioning to that office, but also for the people they serve. And the cabinet positions that I mentioned that currently don't report to directly to the mayor. I think that is definitely a top priority, because right now we have some cabinet positions, or we have cabinet meetings, but all of the members of all of the people that are in cabinet meetings aren't necessarily cabinet. But we include them because their positions are so critical to city operations that they should also get that information that we're giving to cabinet members. So that's the fire chief, the police chief, the director of personnel, and the airport director, just for consistency's sake, right? That you know that all of these offices report directly to the mayor, and that leaves the mayor accountable for those positions should something happen in either one of those departments. The buck stops with the mayor, because right now it says that the mayor is the CEO of the city. However, all of the departments that are responsible for some of the day-to-day things that we experience don't report directly to me. So just making it consistent there. The elections and let me go through my laundry list. Give me 1 second. And if I had to pick a third, it would be the supply commissioner, to allow us more flexibility and to, again, as Jake and I discussed, to increase that based on some sort of CPI or index, to allow us more flexibility to respond when we have emergencies. And so the supply commissioner can be more flexible and responsive to when we have natural emergencies, as we've experienced with the flood back in July of 2022.
Right.
Any other questions?
Do we have anyone else with questions for Mayor Jones while we have her attention and her presentation? I'm going to ask my questions if it's okay at this point. Would you say that I believe from listening to you and you answering the questions from Commissioner Crossland, that your concerns are primarily related to structural aspects of how the charter reads and who reports to whom? Would you consider those to be operational, managerial concerns, or actual charter concerns?
I would say they're charter concerns, because like we were talking about with our cabinet meetings, for example, with the fire chief and the police chief that, that don't report to me, but they come to meetings. They don't necessarily say, well, the mayor's not my boss. I'm just trying to make sure that the charter reflects a lot of the things that we're currently doing, that it reflects the cooperation that we currently have, and that there are clear lines and direct lines of authority.
Are you aware of any other direct lines of authority that need to be adjusted in the charter and reflected in the amendment?
No, we went through the charter with a pretty fine tooth comb. So those were, I would say, our low hanging fruit.
Okay. So in order to, I know we have some cross-reference and we're going to definitely get to the personnel director, because she has been anticipated. Everybody's requesting to get a report from the personnel director. But while we have you, I know that you have served in some other positions. Are there any other aspects of the city that are not currently reflected in the charter? When I did my comb of our current structure and what the charter reflects, there's a gaping hole in what is reflected. So I know that the commissions, for example, are not reflected in the charter. Are there any other areas of how we're currently functioning that's not reflective in the charter as it stands?
So I'm going to start with a huge disclaimer that because I'm describing this, it doesn't mean that I want to change it. But we do have 6 countywide elected officials that are on separate election cycles because of the nature of St. Louis being a city and a county. And that isn't necessarily something that I don't think that we can change in the charters. So a lot of that has to change at the state level, i.e., we have the treasurer, the circuit attorney, the sheriff, the collector of revenue, the license collector, and the recorder of deeds. In a lot of cities, some of those offices are appointed, and some of them are elected. A lot of times when I'm traveling around the country and I say that we have 9 citywide elected officials, people's eyes buck out. And again, I'm not saying that this needs to be changed, but it is one of the challenges that we incur while governing. One of the ways that I have decided to approach it is to have monthly meetings and an open door policy with the countywide elected officials to let them know that we're here to help. And we're here to work with them and to make sure that we can identify resources, either federally, state, or otherwise, to help them do their jobs as well. So there's no like competition or any sort of back and forth. So we've been able to help the new circuit attorney in his transition to office. We've been able to help the collector of revenue with a couple of programs he'd like to start. Through ARPA funds, we're working right now with the recorder of deeds on an entire digitization process across the city, because we have a lot of paper records that we'd like to see digitized. And I also trying to identify other funds to help him do that. So just because it's that structure doesn't mean that we can't work within it. And so I've decided to work within it rather than just to say, oh, it's just the way it is and we can't work together. That doesn't serve anybody.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Mayor Jones while she's present?
I have one more. When we had our most recent commission meeting, some recommendations were made by some community organizations that had met together. And one of the recommendations, I'd like to hear your feedback about it, had to do with hiring a city manager. And in your travels, I know that you've run across other cities that have different kinds of structures than we have here in St. Louis, and some of them include city managers. From your point of view, how does a city manager help or not help within the current structure here in St. Louis? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm opposed to that structure for several reasons. Number one, the city manager would shift the city government to a council manager model. And in that model, the mayor is merely a ceremonial and political leader with no authority. I show up to kiss babies, cut ribbons, and shake hands. And the city manager is appointed by and serves at the pleasure of the local legislature, not the mayor. Therefore, the city manager is not directly accountable to the people. I am directly accountable to the people. This would firmly shift the city to a weak mayor system, a mayor with no real power, including no veto power. And I know that some people think that our current system with the Board of E&A says that the mayor is we currently have a weak mayor system, but our Board of E&A meetings are typically 5 minutes or less, and they are ceremonial. But also, I'd like to think that in our current system, a mayor, the system is only as weak as the person in the seat. And if you believe that you are a weak mayor and you're in a weak mayor system, then you're going to perform as a weak mayor. I see myself as a strong mayor system, and I perform as such. A strong mayor system is also critical for being a blue city in a red state, where the values of our residents are constantly under attack by hostile legislatures. Right now, we're fighting back against state control again of our police department. They're trying to take away our earnings tax, and we're constantly fighting preemption. I believe a strong mayor system helps fight against the things that we hold dear in our home rule city. The city manager is also able to exercise authority for a non-elected official. Under the current system, if voters are dissatisfied with me or city services, they can remove me by voting me out of the office. But a city manager can only be removed with sufficient votes by the local legislature, leaving him or her open to cutting deals with members of the Board of Aldermen so they won't remove him or her from office. And it constantly removes an important degree of accountable governance, I'd say. And city managers tend to be transient, moving from city to city to where the opportunities are, who are not familiar with our local government, our local needs, our city, the way things run, the political structure, the players in that structure. And we would be fearful of that person moving to better opportunities if a job arises. We've seen in other municipalities, even in St. Louis County, where it is difficult for small counties to attract a city manager because there's a city residency requirement. So if the city only has, 10,000 people, then you're going to have to recruit from outside and possibly pay relocation services or relocation fees in order to hire a city manager. So for that and many other reasons, I'm opposed to it. I'm a strong mayor and I act as such.
To that point, Mayor Jones, I have a few questions pertaining to, I've gotten a few questions about the authority in which the mayor's seat, mayor office actually has, and where there probably needs to be some strengthening of what that authority looks like. There is several elected positions within our current city government, and I hear you say, and I hear them say, that you all are accountable to the people of the city. The charter doesn't reflect or document what that accountability looks like outside of the vote itself, outside of the ballot, outside of elections. Can you speak to what that accountability structure should be and where it's documented, or if it should be reflective in the charter?
You mean with the countywide elected positions? Because I believe that they are accountable directly to the voters themselves.
And that would include the mayor's seat, correct?
Yes.
So I think that just needs, I asked it so that it could be clear across the board on what that reflection is, but the authority pertaining to the mayor's office and the individuals that have or are able to exercise that authority, do you think that what that authority is should be reflective in the charter, or it should stay as it is currently?
Well, if we try to reflect that in the charter, it would require a state of the a vote of the legislature first. So in order for those, what we call those countywide seats to be reflective in the charter, the state would first have to give up authority of those seats. And I see Jake, who's also a recovering legislator, nodding his head there. That's something that we can't simply do just by charter alone. It would require the state legislature to act, as well as then adding that to the charter. And I personally don't have too much, I don't think that the state legislature is going to act to give St. Louis any more power.
Correct. So I wanted to make sure I asked you that question so that I communicated to the people.
Uh-huh.
This has come up several different times in several different ways as well in our process. And I just wanted to make sure that it was
Yeah.
thoroughly communicated. Thank you so much, Mayor Jones. I appreciate your time. If we have any other questions for the mayor, if we could ask them now. We have 1:37.
One more, I guess, one more point on that last question. I experienced this myself as treasurer. When I went to the state legislature, I think Jake, you were still a senator then. I simply wanted to add the authority for financial empowerment services to the treasurer's office. And I was fought tooth and nail by Democrats in the state legislature that I shouldn't have that authority. So it's not just Republicans who don't think that the mayor should have any more authority. It's also some Democrats. My predecessor experienced this, Mayor Slay, when he wanted to have the authority to open charter schools, or for the city to have to be a sponsor for charter schools. And they stripped that one piece out of the entire bill. They left the whole bill intact, but stripped that one piece for the mayor to have any authority over charter schools out. It's the unfortunate tug of war that we have with the state legislature wanting to come to St. Louis for everything that's good, and wanting to fight against us for everything that's bad.
For the record, I didn't oppose you on that.
I know.
Appreciate that, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, Mayor, we really appreciate your time and working with the commission staff to come and present to us today. We, again, appreciate your time and taking out the time to present to us and answer our questions pertaining to the city charter.
You're welcome. And feel free to reach out to Casey or me if you have any other follow-up questions.
Will do.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Hamilton.
Yes.
Respond to the personnel director.
We actually have our city register up next. And yes.
Okay, personnel director. I'm gonna leave you last, but definitely not.
Our personnel director is actually scheduled for the 24th in 2 weeks.
Okay, 24th in 2 weeks. I believe I got an email from you to reschedule that, or was it someone else?
No, that was me, and I responded back to you, Madam Chair, to let you know that I will be available because the meeting is virtual.
Okay.
Okay.
We appreciate it again in advance. In advance, I appreciate it. City register is next, right, Commissioner Hamilton? Okay. So I'm gonna make sure I'm horrible with names, but I'm gonna make sure I get it. Mrs. Amber Boykin Sims?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna have a presentation for the next 30 minutes from our city register pertaining to her presentation related to her articles at this time. Allow her to present completely. If you have questions, we'll have them at the end of her presentation. The floor is yours, city register.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Amber Boykin Sims, the city register. The city register is an appointed position by the mayor of the city of St. Louis. And prior to me taking this position, I, as the mayor said, am a recovering state legislator. So I agree with her in that regard. I have served in my position for the past 2.5 years. The registrar's position is a position that's equivalent to a county clerk's position in other cities and municipalities. Although the registrar's office is an appointed position, we are accountable to all city departments and all citizens of the city of St. Louis. All documents and information in the registrar's office are public information documents. I have 3 approved positions in my office. One is my administrative assistant, whom I have delegated and designated to act in my absence. We are small staff, but we're mighty. We're one of the most important offices in the city of St. Louis. Of course, I'm tooting our horn. And per the city charter, the register has custody of the city seal, original ordinances, all contracts, original index cards and documents, as well as documents attested in the name of the city, and all original acts of the mayor, as well as important and historic records for preservation, distribution, reference, and usage by all city departments, the Board of Aldermen, county offices, and the public. My duties are, per the city charter, I shall preserve and have custody of all those important documents, inclusive of all the original city ordinances and contracts. I also administer the official oath of office to all city employees and city appointees to boards and commissions. And I file and store and keep that information and affirmations in my office. The registrar's office works with the Board of Aldermen. The registrar's office also assigns all ordinance numbers to all board bills that are passed into law by the Board of Aldermen and signed by the mayor. Per city ordinance number 64401 passed in June of 1998, the registrar's office has the responsibility of recording and maintaining the city's domestic partnership registry, which also allows city employees and city residents in committed relationships who meet the criteria to apply and register and obtain a certificate of attesting to their status. Rights of domestic partners include having the right to add domestic partners to their partners' health benefits, visit partners and healthcare facilities within the city of St. Louis, as well as jail facilities owned and operated in the city. It's important to note that the city of St. Louis is one of the few cities and municipalities that has a domestic partnership registry. And this is really something that I brag on for the city of St. Louis, because St. Louis County does not have it, and many of the other surrounding municipalities. So we get calls all the time wanting to be a part of our domestic partnership registry, in which we have to tell them no or encourage them to come and work for this great city or move to our great city. So that affords me the opportunity to teach and tell them that. So I enjoy doing that. And when they call to inquire about domestic partnership registry. As I stated, also part of my duties is the preservation of all these important documents in the city. And so immediately after being appointed to my position, I began evaluating the registrar's office storage room. And so I contacted, facilities management, and then the Board of Public Service President, Richard Bradley, because the storage room was inadequate and it did not meet part of what is required as my duty as the city registrar per the charter. And we began to evaluate that and found out, like, as I said, that regarding the city's most precious documents and important documents is just simply was not being cared for and treated for. So they were not being stored properly. And as I stated, the city charter requires that I preserve those important papers. I researched and found and identified a storage area space here in City Hall for us to relocate and securely store those documents per the city charter. I have also applied for and been awarded a local records preservation grant because, as the mayor spoke to and many others, the technology and our ability to perform in today's world is just simply not there. I applied for this digitization grant from Missouri Secretary of State's office to begin phase 1 of a multi-phase preservation project here for the city's ordinance books. This is an ongoing project, and so I have applied for the grant funding and will apply each year until the project is complete. And I've also looked at other opportunities to apply for grant funding and for us to be in compliance with the city charter on the federal and state level. So also this year, I did request in my FY Capital 2025 budget funding request to be able to rehab the identified storage area so that we can be in compliance. I've worked with the Board of Aldermen and others within city government to come up with an emergency plan to keep our documents safe. We have committed to meeting and discussing further possible opportunities to work together. And so I look forward to those conversations. As I state, we continue to get these documents properly stored and in safe, secure space. As far as changes to the charter, I will say many have talked about the usage of the pronouns and reference to salary, so I won't go over that. But I will ask that we may consider looking at the words shall and must and how they are used to create requirements or as it pertains to language in the city charter. And I've been told that, you know, the word shall has changed historically from what it was in the past. And I'm quite sure Councilor Sheena Hamilton can speak to, you know, maybe what that has changed. But I've been told that the word shall now means differently has a different meaning as been held by courts and can mean not just must and may, but also will and is. And so I'm going to ask that we look at some language that will require our storage record area here in the city of St. Louis be a must and be maintained and preserved here in our designated storage area space. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present before you today, and thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much, City Register. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Ms. Sims?
Let me just clarify, because this is all new to me in terms of all of the document retention and everything else. And also the registry that you were talking about, the domestic registry. That was a deliberate decision then to place that in the city register's office as opposed to where marriage licenses and other kinds of licenses are, or how do the two of you do the two offices intersect at any point on any of this documentation issue, or are you entirely separate in terms of what is retained by one versus the other?
We are entirely separate, and that city ordinance, as I mentioned, 64401, established the domestic partnership registry in the office of the register. But what I did do when I took this position was made the cost of the domestic partnership registry application the same as a marriage license in the city of St. Louis. It was originally $10, and that had been the cost for a very, very long time. And when I took this appointed position, I changed that to mirror what a marriage license is in the city of St. Louis, which is $48.
So it's actually in the charter itself that the registry is located in the register's office. Is that correct?
No, that's per city ordinance.
Okay, so it's in the ordinance itself. I see. Okay, thank you. Oh, and then the other question, I guess, just a quick one was, to what extent are your records digitized at this point?
They are not, and that's why I mentioned to you, I have, since my appointment and with the support of this administration and the mayor, we have begun to digitize all the records here. We began to work in partnership with the Board of Aldermen and our SEMA office, just so that we can be in compliance. And I will say they have supported these efforts in this office. All offices within city government utilize the services here in the registrar's office and need access to these documents because they are public documents. So there has been no effort. It's antiquated. It is just unbelievable. But as I stated, I was very successful in obtaining the local records preservation grant from Missouri Secretary of State's office to do and begin phase 1 that is underway here in the registrar's office. And the goal is to apply each year for phase 2 and 3 until the project is completed. And as I stated, we are also looking at other ways to access funding to bring this office into this century. So no, there is nothing that I will,
Okay, okay.
I will leave it at that.
Wow.
And hopefully I am
Yeah.
hopeful, I'm very hopeful that we will also be able to utilize some of the ARPA funds that other cities have used to digitize their records and preserve those records. So
Great. Well, thank you very much.
thank you.
Ms. Sims, I have a specific question. I'm not gonna go into the tech space of digitizing. I can be there all day, but I wanna speak specifically to what documents you are securing in your office or in your department. Is there a means to reflect what areas or what titles of those documents are in the charter, or is that an obsolete record that needs to be kept or communicated to the public by way of the charter?
We have all documents here in our office that we secure, and these are all, as I stated, public documents. So all contracts that the city has entered and executed, they're housed here in this office. All the ordinances that have been passed here, they're housed here in this office and accessible to the public and others. All the historic documents that each mayor has done, and and each register has attested to those documents, they're housed here. So I believe that the charter should only state that, that we're required to have a secure storage space to house and preserve these documents. And that would be inclusive of all of those that come under the duties of the register, and then those that I named in that list of documents, whether it's, our index cards, it's the ordinances, it's, all of those documents. And so I think if we are able to ensure that we have a secure, fireproof space for all of these documents, as we begin to also digitize them and preserve them, and it not be a question as to whether or not we do that, I wouldn't leave it up to, question. I think we should state in the charter, it's a must. I've been told that must should be used instead of shall, but I do believe that we do need a line in the charter that speaks to how we preserve our historic documents and the most important documents of the city of St. Louis.
Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions for Ms. Sims in the City Registrar's office? No more questions?
I will leave with this funny note. I get calls daily that call to ask me to register their vehicle. So it's daily calls, daily visits for me to register their automobiles, and it has increased since we no longer have that department here in City Hall. So I just leave you with that. And as I stated, in other municipalities and cities, this position is a county clerk, or they have other names for the position. So
Well, I apologize for all city.
no apologies. You know, I enjoy educating the public about what we do here. And so when I have that opportunity, I always talk to them about, we have a domestic partnership registry that you can apply for. And here in my office, if you want to come and visit us, and if you're a city resident and you meet the criteria. So I use it as a teachable moment and an opportunity to engage our constituency because they don't know. So it becomes an opportunity for me to see them and have some conversation and talk with them on the phone. So.
Well, to that note, since I have your attention on that in that way, when you are working to digitize all of the documents that you have, especially the ordinances, what do you envision pertaining to how it needs to be digitized and made available to the public and the personnel that work within the city? I know I've seen some other models, but what do you think it should look like?
Well, the great thing about the state of Missouri is we have the ability, and I have the opportunity to work with Missouri Secretary of State's office, their archives department, the local records department on what that looks like and making sure that we are following guidelines set at the national level. And so they visit me many times, and especially now since we're in phase one of this digitization project, and have walked in hand with us as we started this process. And so they have served as a resource, and then that also has been very helpful in us obtaining funding for phase one. And so that is underway. And the great thing about this office under my leadership, I reached out to the clerk of the Board of Aldermen early on, within 2 weeks of me taking this position, to say, hey, you have important documents and records, and so do we. Let's look at opportunities for us to work together. Let's look at opportunities for us to combine these records. Let's look at opportunities for us to go after federal funds, state funds collectively, and see how successful we are. So we have a very good, solid working relationship, and we have already been working hand in hand with the Board of Alderpersons and their chief clerk, as well as members of the board, to figure out ways that we can work. We've also been in touch with President Green's office to find out what that looks like for that for the board and for that administration. And so we've been very I'll say we've been in communication with one another, each other, on how we can do this together, and then how we can support each other in what we're trying to do. And so it's worked really well. And as I stated, we've even talked with other city departments, whether it's our emergency management agency, to find out, what do we need to be doing? Are we doing it correctly? What is out there? What is being said? And so I've taken a leadership role to make sure that happens. And I'm committed to making sure, as long as I'm the city register, that we move in that way, in that space.
We appreciate your work and your efforts in this way. We also appreciate your time on today presenting to us pertaining to your recommendations for your articles reflected in the city charter. So once again, on behalf of the Charter Commission, I would like to appreciate you and thank you for your time spent with us today presenting on your art.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to participating in this process and working with the commission as you undertake this daunting task. Have an awesome, wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
You gotta stop calling me commissioner.
Sorry. I'm working on what titles I'm going to use. I'm going to say city councilor.
It's easier to just call everybody commissioner, but you guys are the commissioners. We are, you know. But yeah, so I don't believe we have any other business for this meeting, and we will have Director Gray for our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, and we are a couple minutes over, but pretty good on time.
I tried to watch it.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have any questions pertaining to closing out this work group session? Jake, it's good to see you today.
Thank you. I squeeze it in here when I can. I appreciate you guys working with me.
No problem. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
I'm also happy to see our personnel director. I'm gonna keep saying it, but I'm happy to see her down there. And once again, thank you for the designee from the comptroller's office. We're appreciative of all of you all spending your time with us on for our work group meetings and doing what we know is this daunting task. So, city councilor, if there's nothing else for us, we can end this meeting.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.